First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining me here today. This session, creating new and innovative applications, mobile and web applications using network APIs. My name is Paul Schultz. I'm from Verizon. So we're obviously one of the big carriers here, Verizon Wireless in North America and all the Verizon services. And the topic today of network APIs is quite interesting. In fact, in sessions just prior to this one and throughout this Java one, since I've been here, there's been a lot of talk. So I was here last year. There was certainly less talk of network APIs, certainly APIs. So I'm very encouraged to see all the new and exciting things that are going on. At Verizon, my primary responsibility over the last couple of years has been to be an advocate for open development. So the vision of myself and a lot of the members of my team is to create Verizon as a platform. So we feel that within just like many large companies, we have a lot of interesting assets. And what we want to do is open it up to third-party innovation developers like yourselves. And we want to be able to do that, make it very easy to discover, to onboard, and to run your apps and, to make some money with it. All right. So with that said, let me go ahead and I'm just showing some pictures from an application, a web application built with network APIs. And these are from last year, some pictures. I had some opportunity to wander around San Francisco last year. I've got an updated version that I'll show you later for this year. And of course, powered by network APIs using multimedia messaging service and short message service. So my plan for today is to minimize the number of slides. So a minimized amount of slideware and really to focus more on live demos. So it was interesting Sunday night up at the Masonic Hall. I really appreciated the fact that the Oracle guys were up there doing, JavaFX and ME, and they were moving in smaller and smaller devices. And I really like live demos and I respect the fact as they work to the Raspberry Pi. Was anybody at the Masonic Center and see that? So a few of you saw that. It was great. They're doing all these different demos and no net live demo. And what I think happened, and I don't know this for sure, but the Raspberry Pi, they built it, they loaded it on the Raspberry Pi, and as he was typing in, they probably didn't do any error checking because it was just a demo, and it ended up crashing the Raspberry Pi. But again, I applaud the no net approach to doing demos that way. I hope to do that myself. Let's see. So let me move on to what the agenda is. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about open development a little bit. I want to show you a little bit about the Verizon developer community. So at developer.verizon.com, we have a portal. And the idea there is to make it easy for developers to discover, try out. And I'll show you a little bit about how you can try out network APIs. I can show you which ones are commercially available today. And then, from there, we'll go into some other things. I want to talk a little bit about service exposure. One of the reasons that we're here at Oracle Java 1 conference is we use a piece of Oracle infrastructure called the Oracle Communication Services Gatekeeper. So it's a WebLogic based platform that is our gateway, and I'll talk a little bit about that and the importance of that. It's very scalable, reliable, and extensible, and I'll talk a little bit about the service exposure and how we extend that. And of course, the heart of my presentation is really about the demos. So live demos and a couple things I want you to look out for. So again, I was showing you the messaging demo. I'll show you a little bit about some updates we've made since last year. But I'm going to do a number of different demonstrations around location. So location is still a hot topic and it probably will remain so. But I plan to take a little bit of a unique viewpoint on location. So the two themes that you should hopefully see throughout this is the privacy of our subscribers is paramount. So we make sure that anyone that is going to be located by an application or any of their data, they own that data. So the Verizon subscriber, their data is theirs. They choose what they opt into. So the whole privacy protection, I'm going to talk about that. And then separate but related is some ideas around location and how you can just provide the amount of location you need to. So I'll call it like good enough, just like good enough engineering. There should be good enough location where perhaps you don't need a precise location. Perhaps you don't even need to deliver location. You just might say, an application could make a query to say, is this particular subscriber or are these subscribers within a certain proximity of a point in a radius? So kind of like a geofence. Are they in or out? And things like that. So again, a little bit different look at location, both from the privacy perspective, but also from a perspective of in a sense, obfuscating where the true location is. And maybe I'll show you even in ways where you could actually tune your location. So maybe an end user might want to provide a more precise when they're indoor, if it's not picking up Wi-Fi, or they may want to put themselves in a location that they're not. So think about that. And then, of course, after demos, future and where we're going in question and answer. So I plan to leave some time at the end and anywhere along this if you have any questions. So feel free to ask questions at any time. So I want to take a look at the Verizon developer community quickly. So let me change to here. So again, I mentioned at developer.verizon.com. You can go here and sign up. And what I wanted to do here, there's lots of information, but again, since this is about network APIs, I want to focus on that in particular. So within here we have Verizon APIs, and when I go here, we'll see the commercially available APIs. And I'll show you more detail about these later. So here we have short message service, multimedia message service, terminal location, what did I miss? Carrier properties, and terminal status. So from here, of course, I'm just going to mention that those there, we're going to look at those in more detail. But from here, when you drill down, there's a button here where you can try these things. So in the spirit of letting you try before you buy and try something quickly, you go to this, you can register your devices, and I'll show you in another demo later kind of what the user experience for that is. You can select which API you want to try, and then you can opt in and send a request. So if I go to get started here, I've already, logged out. Got to be logged in. So the first thing in order to get this, get here, is you want to be able to create an account. And it's really easy and it's free. So that's all great. Let me go here. So here I am in the try these things. So you'll notice that I've got two phones. Actually, I got both phones here. One of them is a test phone, one's my normal phone. And then here's the actual API. So if I just pick an easy one like SMS, here I can just pick one of the devices I've registered and type in some text and go ahead and send an SMS. And down below you'll see here's the rest for that particular API. Of course, it's pretty simple. Sending an SMS is simple by design. It should be. And here's the SOAP. So in general, let's see if this is an accurate statement. Yes, so for all the APIs we expose today, all the public APIs, we have both SOAP and REST versions of APIs. And one thing I wanted to mention about network APIs, let me step back for a moment. About 2 weeks ago, there was the Global SDP Summit, Service Delivery Platform Summit in Rome. And hopefully, maybe somebody got to go there. I wish I did. I didn't. One of our friends, Alan Quayle, who has an excellent blog, was a participant and a blogger there and has a great blog post about globally what's happening in the carrier community about network APIs. And so there were 3 points about that I took away from what was being talked about. So I think these are relevant in the sense that it's a global conference. It's talking, all I shouldn't say all operators. Since it's global, there's operators from all over the world, different regions. And there were 3 themes that I want to mention. First is there was a lot of discussion about the maturity APIs coming from operators and a categorization of public versus private APIs. There was a lot of focus on the fact that there's the public APIs, and again, that's what I'm showing you here. These are public APIs. The majority of what we'll talk about here today are public APIs. Makes sense for this community, as Java developers. These are ones you can go off and try and use now. The second theme, so around the private APIs, there's a lot of traction in offering APIs within the carriers themselves, right? So we can, share services amongst our products, perhaps more easily with APIs. And there's private APIs that may just be between particular organizations or, for whatever reason, they're not public APIs. So a new focus on looking at both those areas. Another comment was about standards, and there was a good session yesterday. My colleague Hugh Fletcher did Birds of a Feather about network APIs. And there were some good questions and discussion about standards. So our APIs, there's a few standards out there today. ParlayX is one, and One API is another standard. So standards are great, they're good, but one of the key takeaways from the Global SDP Summit was that while standards are good, we shouldn't be limited by them. So there are some folks that feel that the standards may slow us down, right? So I guess the key takeaway I looked at that is, if there's a standard for something that does the job, might as well use it. But if there's other ways or you want to extend it or there's no standard for it, don't let it slow you down, right? So I would like to think that if you've got a good, useful API, you start a standards track in parallel, but you get something out there you can build, measure, learn, get it in the hands of developers quickly. And the third key takeaway is the notion of cooperation. So as an industry, I'm going to speak about the carriers and the communications industry, we can do a better job of making it easier to do cross-carrier stuff, right? So a lot of the things that I'll be showing you today are Verizon specific, but as an application developer, you're going to want to be able to say, locate this mobile phone. And in many instances, whatever the API is, you shouldn't have to know or care who the carrier is, right? So we're not known to be the fastest innovators in the world. However, there is this more coming together to make cross-carrier stuff easier to do. It's all about you, the developers. And I should make the point that while this title of this talk is about innovation, I'm not going to claim that that I'm going to show you things innovative. It's really your job. So my job and our job is to provide you with the APIs and the tools and the processes and procedures to do the innovation, right? So that it's really your job. But here's just the demonstrations will show you the types of things that can be done. All right. Let me go back to the slideware for a moment. All right, what's next? Okay, so service exposure at Verizon. So on this chart, the most important thing is left off. So if I think about this in terms of outside in, that's the important thing, right? So you guys shouldn't know or care about the inside stuff. That's really our job. So again, the themes I mentioned is discoverability, onboarding, being able to try before you buy, being able to monetize your applications, make money. I would imagine there's a lot of you in here that would like to make money with your applications. So the outside in perspective is certainly the most important. Where I sit and where I work is service exposure. And I just have a couple of the types of assets. So again, Verizon's a big company. We've got a global IP network. We've got 4G LTE, our fiber network. We got Terramar Cloud, and lots of other things. So I think of it kind of as a push and pull. What I'd like to hear, certainly during the Q&A or whenever you have this, what are the kinds of things you guys need that we might be able to do? So I'd like to think as a large carrier, we have assets that are of value to you. And so that would be more, you guys coming to us and telling us what you need and we exposing those APIs. On the other hand, I like to think of, companies like Apple and things where they'll invent something before we ever even, need to know that we even needed it. The iPod, right? So didn't know I needed one, but when it came out, it's like, oh, got to have one of those. So looking around inside at the assets, might want to look around and discover things and say, you know what, if we expose that to innovative developers like yourselves, it'd be of value. The other thing probably worth mentioning is when dealing with the network elements underneath the line here, one of the jobs of the service exposure platform is, from my operations friends, is to do no harm. So as I move into looking at the actual service exposure infrastructure, one of the things that's very important is to make sure that you're protecting the underlying network elements that are rendering the service for you via APIs and for other services. All right, so moving into the service exposure infrastructure, I mentioned the Oracle Communication Services Gatekeeper. And this is a figure I lifted for some of the documentation that's on the Oracle site. This is an Oracle picture, and I'll give you the reference here. It's a document called Making Money Through Service Exposure and the New Business Model It Enables. It's from Oracle of June of 2012. So the service exposure platform, you could consider that sitting at the edge of the network. And above it, what we want to do is expose API interfaces that are the flavor and the kinds that you all want. So SOAP and REST-like. I learned some more stuff about REST earlier today, the different level 1 through 3 of REST. So different flavors of APIs that you're accustomed to, web services or similar. Because looking in the network, if you go down to the bottom, I don't think anyone in here wants to program to Mobile Location Protocol 3.2, right? It's probably not terribly exciting to you. One of the things that the service exposure platform can talk to a location server over the protocol it understands. It might be session initiation protocol or IMS, service control interface or whatever all this stuff is. You guys shouldn't have to know or care. So towards the various developer communities, we want to expose the APIs, make them simple to use. I think a great model is Twilio. Twilio does a lot of great things, and their site is great. It's easy to get started. So we want to have those simple interfaces. And then I mentioned southbound at least from my perspective, is protecting the network elements. That is part of this. And of course, the protocol conversion. But as API requests come in, you obviously have to do things like authentication, authorization, all that kind of good stuff. And in terms of policy management, there's really kind of two flavors you want to think of. Facing your applications, probably the only one you care about, is what is the SLAs? So for example, which APIs do you have access to? What rates and quotas, things like that. So for your application, when it's onboarded, you'll get a certain service level. Now, there's also, the platform provides in the network plugins down to the network elements, there's rates and quotas there as well. And this is less things that you care about. But for example, by protecting the network, I may have my friends that provide the messaging servers, and they'll say, oh, you want to wire up to this thing? Great, but I want you to not only authenticate and authorize to my platform, I don't want you to send more than 1,000 transactions per second or whatever it happens to be the network element. So a very robust WebLogic piece of infrastructure. And one of the important things I'm going to go in a little bit of detail is the capability of doing service interceptors. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why you'd want to do that, and I'm going to show a little bit of just very high-level Java code for some of these things. So I'm going to move now to the service interceptors. So why might you want to intercept these requests? So if you think of that stack coming from the application down to the network elements and back up, we might want to, for example, modify a request. So for example, maybe there's a request that comes in for location, and it may be asking for a fine-grained location. So maybe assisted GPS, very, very fine-grained, very specific location. And for some reason, it could be maybe time of day, day of week, it may be who the user is, whatever it is, we may say, you know what, for these criteria, we're going to change that to a coarse grain for whatever reason. So we can modify the request coming in. Similarly, if a request is coming up from the network, we might want to modify the response coming back to your application. So location's another example. We may want to mask results. I kind of mentioned obfuscation and doing things like that. And there's lots of other reasons we want to do that. So service interception is important. We might want to deny a request. And specifically, I'm going to move into doing a privacy check, and I want to talk about that, how we do that, the fact that, again, before we allow an application to have access to the subscriber's data, we make sure that that subscriber is opted in for that. So how do you do this in Java? You implement an interface, you define a method, and then you decide what to do next. You might abort, you might proceed, or you might proceed to the next interceptor in a chain. And so here's some very simple Java about the service interceptor. So there's a privacy interceptor class. It implements the invoke method. And then right about in the middle there is the check privacy. So what we have is a privacy database, and there's a couple of different ways that you can twiddle the bit, if you will, in the privacy database. So one way is dynamically by us sending you an SMS ask, right? So and I'll show you what that might look like. So an application says, say it's the friend finder, it wants to locate you. At that time, we may send you and say, you get an SMS that says the friend finder wants to locate you. Do you want to deny? Do you want to allow always? Do you want to allow for the next 24 hours? So you can do it that way. Through the My Verizon portal, the Verizon subscribers can go in and find applications they're subscribed to. And then there's a third way for trusted applications with their proper business agreements. We expose a privacy and policy management interface. So imagine if you're a large company, the XYZ company, and you want to have subscribers subscribe to your app, and you're going to take care of all the opting in, and we trust that you're going to do that. We'll give you an interface to say, okay, you've opted in. Again, but keep in mind the caveats that all the business things, you have to follow all the rules. And really the end rule is the subscriber has to opt in, right, and have the ability to opt out. So privacy, hugely important. So what I'm going to do is do one more piece of slideware, and I'm going to move into demos. This is a little bit different. So from the Oracle Communication Services Gateway, there's a communication service creation wizard. It's Eclipse wizard, and it produces output. And here's the output of that as an example for terminal location. So what this is it gives you some information about the actual get location request, the URI, the HTTP method, the response content type, and the response body, and some error responses. So this is nice, and this is a piece of documentation you could use as you develop your application. All right, so with that, let's go to the demos. All right, let me go to, all right, so I mentioned the commercial APIs that are available. This one's location. I'm going to come back to that. Here's short message service. And so you can send an SMS, you can get a delivery status, you can start a notification and stop. So the notification stuff for it is, it's not only sending an SMS out, right, to a mobile device, mobile originated. So say, for example, you have an application and you want someone to be able to send an SMS and direct it to your application and to do whatever you want to do with. So you set a callback, and then when our platform sees that, we say, oh, this is yours, and we hand it to your application. So that's true of both short message service and multimedia message service, so sending attachments. So same kind of thing. And let's see, same thing for that. So this is multimedia message service, terminal status. So let me go ahead and actually look at terminal status. So this, at the moment, I'll show you what this looks like. Let me put in a phone number here. And I can go out and get the status of this particular mobile device. And so right now, assuming the demo gods are with us, it's not terribly detailed. So the two things, if you can see in green that comes back, it tells you which device it's a tell you are, and it says it's reachable. So what this means is the phone is on, it's registered, it's on the network, and it is. We're looking at, many of these, we're looking at providing more information. So it might be nice to know if you're roaming, other things that we know about that device. So, I mean, this is just simply saying it's reachable, it's on the network. But as you might imagine, there's lots of other things, and certainly be interested to hear what other things might you want to know about that device. All right, so that's terminal status. Carrier properties, I can do this. I could do carrier properties for a phone or for a group. Let me do this. And I'm just typing in a mobile phone. So the mobile device number. So here we look up the carrier properties, and we notice it's the carrier name is Verizon Wireless. There's a carrier ID, and there's also whether it's wireless or not. So you can know if it's a mobile phone or not a mobile phone. And this is another one where there's additional information that we could probably enhance that with. If you want to do a carrier for group, well, from this demo, but the API, you can just keep adding phone numbers and so on and so forth. So that's getting carrier properties. Device characteristics, I'll show you what that looks like. So this one is probably something that's more interesting to you guys. And again, anytime, stop me for questions. All right, so this one is finding information about the device I'm using. It comes back with a device ID, a device model. It's a Samsung model number. The marketing name, the Droid Charged by Samsung, tells you who the manufacturer is, and interestingly, the firmware version. So, oh yes, sir. Excellent question. I'll repeat that. He said, so we can get the information about any device for any carrier. And that's where we want to go. So the answer is today, no, not with this. These are Verizon specific. So this is commercially available now for today, right? So for Verizon. However, as I mentioned, as an industry, we're trying to make the cross-carrier stuff a little easier for you to do, right? So great question today, Verizon only. So it's only for our 100 million Verizon Wireless subscribers. For free. The for free part, I'm not sure about. Probably not. So let me back up. Full disclosure: I'm a technical guy. I'm not a business guy. Although I'm business savvy enough that I don't know if it's free. If back on developer.verizon.com, there is pricing for stuff. So let me stop there for a second. I believe the way it works, you'll have to check. We'll give some number of them for free, right? It's, I don't know if that's a freemium model, whatever you want to call that. So some of them are free if you're going to do a huge number of them, but they're intended to be low cost. Again, not the business guy. All right. Yes, sir. Question. The version of Android they're on. Let's see. Did I see my buddy Hugh in there? Is Hugh here? Yeah, Hugh. Do you know, is that? All right. So great question. In fact, that's interesting. That would be something. I have the Galaxy Nexus that just got Jelly Bean 4.1. I was excited. Wait. Now I got it. It's wonderful. That would be a cool thing to get. So that I'll take that as a takeaway to see. And as you mentioned, this kind of API, it's reaching in. It's it's the database of that. That information is in our network somewhere. So technically, I'm sure we could expose it. I'm taking from you that's something that may be of interest. So that's noted. So great. Other questions before I move on? Yes, sir. So opted in. Yeah, so some number of these require opt-in. Location, I don't remember if device characteristics you need to opt in for. Yeah, you do. Okay, great. Glad you can phone a friend. So this one, in order for your app to get my information, I have to allow that opt in. And so the reason I was hedging on that is some of the things like, maybe carrier properties might not be so sensitive, who cares? But again, it's a value judgment. But generally, being a carrier, we're pretty cautious. So if it's anything about you, and if for any reason you didn't want an app to know about this, we would make you opt in. So I think the general rule of thumb, certainly check the VDC portal and check what the agreements are. But when in doubt, if it's information about that subscriber, we're very protective of it. Okay, so think that probably going to have opt-in to get information about that subscriber. These are great questions. Great, fully engaged team here. I like it. All right, so there's a couple pre-commercial APIs on here. This one's called Place Messaging, and this is one that you could send a position to a device, position for group. You could send an airport code. You can send an address. This isn't commercial, but this just to show you the kinds of things we're thinking about. And another one that's not commercial yet either is device capabilities and configuration. Go out and get a configuration list. And what's interesting is being able to push something to a device. So the example here is showing a mobile location agent. So we may want to have a location agent on a mobile device to do precise location. And we might want to be able to, through, programmatically through an API, push that is in this case, mobile location agent. And we might even want to start a notification and get a callback to know when it's installed and ready to go, right? So if your application says, gee, I need this location agent, I can push it out there, let me know when it's ready to go, and then you can go do the next thing you have to do. So those are some of the future APIs that are coming up. Let me go back to location. Location's very rich, right? So get location. I'll just do this real quick while we're talking about it. I'm just going to do one of a mobile device that I have here, and I'm going to leave the defaults. And you'll notice that there's one of the nice things about this as a web-based test tool. It's easy, for me at least, you can visualize it, and it's easier to demonstrate what it is. So you see the parameters, requested accuracy, acceptable accuracy. I'll just get a course location. But through this tool, being able to visualize this, you can see the different parameters you can set for these types of things. And then the type of location I want to get is, again, I'm a big fan of, if I don't need a coarse grain, why not just get if I don't need a fine grain location, just get a coarse grain location. So that's what it looks like, and we just mash it up on a map. That looks pretty much where we are. There's a terminal distance. I'll come back to that. Get location for group. But as I mentioned, if you want to, your friend finder, say we're all here at Java 1. We want to find out where everybody is and find a nice central place to go out and have a cocktail. We could do that. Set a periodic notification. So this is one where you could say, for example, every 5 minutes you want to track somebody. So I think about using this for good. So say I have a college kid driving junker car up to college. Let's keep an eye on making sure, keep moving in the right direction. Don't go out in the weeds. So that's periodic notification. And then one that's very interesting is geographic notification. So setting geofences. Set a point and a radius. And so being able to be notified, have your application notified once you enter or leave a geofence. I think that's quite a interesting one. Pretty useful. All right, so here, let me do a terminal location one. I'm going to do get terminal distance. And I think, 0 meters, because it's finding where I am. So what I did was, what I want to do is I'm going to Fisherman's Wharf this evening. So I just went on to Google Maps and I just got a latitude and longitude. So let me go find out how far I am from that. Let's see. Cutting and pasting. All right, so I've got my point for Fisherman's Wharf. Okay, so, and I'm just mashed up on a map to visualize it. It says I'm a little over 2,000 meters away from Fisherman's Wharf, right? So that's an example. And what I want to do with that now, I just want to show you a little bit of Java code. Since we're at Java 1, some of you guys might get nervous if you don't see some code for a little while. So let me go look at that. So we did terminal distance, mashed it up on a map. So this is, again, pretty simple stuff, invoking the terminal distance API. And you see kind of in the middle here, the input parameters, we're sending in an address, a tell URI, a latitude and longitude, and then the API returns back a distance. So pretty simple stuff on that one. So that's kind of a survey of some of the APIs in general. So let me move on to another demo, Location Notifier. So this is, and what I'm showing here is a simulation, and I'll kind of show you what this looks like through, I'm going to try doing this through a video. So the reason I did this is that there's a number of steps. So let me tell you a little bit about what this is going to show. It's going to show first opting in a phone. So if I want to, again, you always want to make sure somebody opts in. If I want to opt in a phone to test this out with, run a simulation. So first I'm going to opt in a phone. And then what I want to do is to be able to set up a notification. So to say, someone's going to be traveling around, and when they come into this geofence, let me know about it, right? So how when people like when a VIP comes to visit my office or something, there's always the, oh, call me when you get here. Well, if you set a notification and say, send me an SMS. The other reason I did a video of this is that there's two phones involved. There's the phone that I'm going to be tracking, and then there's the phone I'm going to receive the notification on, right? So let me give this a whirl here, and I'll talk through this. I didn't hear it. So here's what this looks like. And the first thing I mentioned, so it's the location notifier, and I'll show you a real example here in a moment. So what I'm going to do first is put in an MDN. So a mobile device number, I'll put it in, and I'm going to validate this so that I can get permissions to do things with this phone. And again, for a test phone. So I'll go and validate who the carrier is, and then it's going to send a PIN. And if you'll notice, we'll send, and again, the way we did this is a 5-digit number that comes up on the web app. So this is assuming I'm sitting here with my phone. So here's my phone, says, oh, verify your MDN with that 5-digit PIN you got. So on the phone, I type in that PIN, I send that back in, and when that comes back into the web application, then we know that I actually had that device and it's validated. So that's part. So now that we have it, let's go locate that phone that we just added. So again, this is very similar to what we saw before. Locate it, mash it up on a map. When I did this, I was in beautiful Colorado Springs. That's where I'm from. And so that's where that map is from. So now I can go in and set up a notification. So this first thing to monitor is the phone that I'm going to track. I called this one Bob Track, and I'm going to put in the mobile device number for that. And then this is to be messaged back to say who you're tracking. So I put in who the tracking person, this is me, and it's going to go to my other mobile phone. And then I can set up some criteria. So this one I'm going to set up for 30 minutes. And I'm going to leave the default to say, here's a point in radius. Let me know when someone comes in and breaks that geofence. So send me a notification. So now I have this, and here I'm going to validate with the end user that I can do this tracking. So I don't know about you, but I would like to know if somebody's going to be tracking me. So this is a thing where on the mobile device, again, it says, Dr. Paul is using location notifier and wants to be notified of your location, and you can allow or deny. You'll see I put a code in here because we're reusing short codes, but again, this is a mobile originated. So once I opt in for this, so we'll go ahead and put the allow code in, and that'll allow me to go ahead and start a notification for this. So once I start a notification, here it is, and so now it's running. So now it's going to periodically track me. And so here's what it looks like, and what we've done in there to help do this is a simulation. So instead of having to drive around and do this, here's a simulation where you can just move the phone, you can resize the accuracy that you're in, and it'll trigger and keep locating you, right? And I'm going to show you a real example of this later. So you go on and you kind of move around on your map so you can kind of test the behavior, and eventually it's going to come in and it's going to send a message in, and this is my other phone, where it says, here's the notification to Bob Track, and it sent me the latitude and longitude. So now I know that they're here, and I know they've broken the geofence. So here's what it looks like. And then one last thing about it is all the events that happen. So in here you see the application sent a consent. It got a consent received that they accepted it. And then it goes through and periodically tracks you. So it's like, a periodic notification. And then the stuff in purple is all the simulation. And once you break the geofence, it lets you know, right? So that's just a quick way of looking at what that looks like. And let me show you a real one. So what I did is before I came out here on, let's see, when was it? Sunday. So I came out Sunday. So on Saturday night before I went to bed, I set up a notification, and I had the grand idea, since I was going to be up very early, that I would go ahead and do one of these when I arrived. So down here you see the map of beautiful San Francisco. And so what I want to do is I want to go into the history and go ahead and load the history of this event. And I'll map it. Let me get my map here. So what we see here is I set up this notification. You can see up here where I opted in. And what I did was early in the airport, it was 4:56 a.m. In Colorado. I started this and turned my phone off. So it didn't locate me while I was flying because the TSA or the whoever it is says I can't have my phone on. And then once I turn my phone on, you'll see all the successful location requests. So it did location. I wandered around in and out of the fence. And so really what happened here is it tracked me somewhere near the airport. It got me again partway here. I took the BART, of course, because it's a cool way to go. And then when I had this point in radius was the hotel that isn't right here, but it's kind of in the area. And so when I broke that geofence, I got a notification on my phone. So again, this is just another example of a web application that was built with network APIs using things like location, carrier properties, things like that. All right, any questions or comments on that one? All right, how am I doing on time? That is the next thing. Yes, sir, far away.
Okay, how did you set the radius of the geofence?
How did I set the radius of the geofence? Let me go to that. Okay, right here. So in here, I could say entering. So yep, it's entering. I could say the distance is 2,000 meters right there, and then latitude and longitude. So, yes, sir.
Is there any way to set a more complex shape? Like say you wanted to outline a city or a state that isn't a circle?
Okay, so that's a great question. He said, is there a way to outline a shape other than a circle? So I wish I had my math major friends here. There's probably a way, but I don't know how to do it. So for these things, I'm going to ponder that one, right? So for a point and radius, certainly using math, there's probably a way to do it. It's just not something we've done. All right, so great questions about that. Yes? So the question is there any geographic information about the user without the user opting in? I'm aware of, but not directly involved in some things. In fact, I saw an announcement today from our proximity marketing. There's a marketing group that has anonymized data. So for like advertising, you might have said how many people between males between ages of 18 and 24 are in this area. There is ways to get that. Today, there's not an API exposed, but we're talking to those people. So there are ways to get what I'll call anonymized data. But today, it's not as easy as just sparking up a REST API, but I hope it is someday, right? So I'll take that as a kind of a to-do that we should expose that kind of information. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just kind of interested more about like country, like not necessarily binary information.
Right.
I want to know what country something is in. And I'm thinking maybe I work for a bank, and if
Yes.
I wanted to block access to our application, our mobile app in certain countries, like OFAC.
So that's a great use case, and there's probably ways to do that when I actually get to one of these proximity demos. That's very nice. The question is, knowing about a country or being able to have that kind of geographic information, and I think that's hugely valuable, and I think that's great, right? So that should be something where we don't have to tell the person where they are, but you could say they're in this country. So not available today, but that's right along the theme of, I'll call it obfuscated location, right, or good enough location. So that great, put that on the requirement list. Other questions?
So how accurate is the information provided by the location provided?
Okay, so great question. So it was the question was, how accurate is the information? Now, if you remember, I went back to the get location, and I requested, my request accuracy is this big number, right? 65,536, right? So I just basically said, I want a coarse grain location. And so what this is doing is going to the network, and in our case in Verizon, it's cell sector, right? And the accuracy is what it's found, my accuracy of this device here inside, it's 1,693 meters. So that's coarse grain, right? Now, if you were to ask for a fine grain location and it was to get a GPS fix, that's possible as well. What I'm highlighting here is the network-based information, because certainly you can go and query the device and get it from the device, or the device knows it itself. But those things take battery power, and things like that. This is from the network. So here's, again, how accurate it is. It kind of depends on the cell sector, but this one's less than 2,000 meters. And for the banking, and I'm going to talk about kind of a banking type example, got a couple of use cases where that's good enough, right? In fact, I'll just mention one of the use cases now. This is great and people are doing this today. Is if I'm a financial institution, I'll say I'm a credit card company, and so I mentioned I'm from Colorado Springs, and I come out here and I, swipe my credit card. My credit card company might say, hey, this guy from Colorado, somebody just swiped his credit card in San Francisco. Let me check if his mobile phone is within 2,000 meters of that point of sale. That'd be a pretty useful piece of information, perhaps for fraud prevention, right? So that might be a use case where good enough, this might be good enough, right? So they know, I don't know about you guys, typically my credit card and my phone are within a few meters of each other, probably all the time, right? So that's a use case in the financial industry that might be useful. And coarse grain is again, good enough. But fine grain, if that's what you need, that you can get that as well. All right, so let me move on. I will do one more of these type of demos, a proximity demo. So let me do this and then I'll explain what I'm doing here. So I mentioned the theme of good enough location. Let's see, is this so let me do this proximity one. All right, and I'll explain what I got here. So I think I put in the Fisherman's Wharf again. So when I do this, I should get back a map and some information about the proximity. And this, again, is another just web app running in the cloud. Assuming the demo gods are working for me today. And so here it is. All right, so let's look at the map first. So again, this is a coarse grain location. The icon of the phone is me, and the icon out at Fisherman's Wharf is the point in radius, and I just said within 2,000 meters. So here's an example of good enough. And what we've done with this proximity demo is, let me first go through what's returned here. Now, I mentioned that what we might want to do is just return the amount of information the application needs. So here's an example. Again, this may be in a country or something, but you could say, how confident are we that this device is within this proximity of a point, right? And so here, there's a 10% confidence that I'm within 2,000 meters of Fisherman's Wharf, right? So that might be all the application needs to know. And of course, if the application says, well, I want to know, I want them to be inside this so I could have a bigger number. But again, with this proximity type of thing is, if they were within that, you could say, yep, they're 90% confident they're within that, and you don't have to tell them where they are. So right here, I happen to be, well, I guess directly south of this. But I think one of the beauties of this is you could say, yeah, this person's nearby, but I'm not going to tell you where they are, right? So if you think about that, a little weird, but that has some pretty useful things. Now, as a user, let me back up to the story. So I've got kids, and I occasionally torture them by showing them this stuff. And when I show them location stuff, I get the word is creepy. They go, Dad, that's creepy. Now, I was doing some precise location, and I was getting like 2-meter fixes, and it could tell what side of the sidewalk. I did a periodic, I'm walking the dog, and they look like, oh, look at this. They go, oh, that's creepy. So this is supposed to assuage the creepiness of it. So it could say, yeah, they're nearby, but I'm not going to tell you where they're at. So let me go through some of the other things. So this is a composite service that uses a bunch of APIs. So the confidence is really the main return here I wanted to mention. Obviously, we used carrier properties. We know who the device is. We know it's reachable. We have the requested latitude and longitude. And then if we want to know the distance apart, how far are they apart, things like that. But again, this could all be masked if the application only wanted to know a confidence that you're within a proximity. That would be a cool thing to know. So any questions or comments about this? Yes, sir. That's what this is. So could we do it by that? Yeah, it is. Yep, exactly. And I suppose the converse is if you wanted a smaller circle around the phone at the bottom, you could use a precise location. So you could mix and match these. But I'm a big fan of, just using the network location because it's quick and easy. All right, so that is that. Now, let me go back to my slide deck here for a moment. And then we'll do a couple more demos. Okay, so we talked about location notifier. Oh yeah, some Java code for the location notifier. So here's some code for processing a mobile originated SMS. And so you think about that ask, right? I want to ask you to opt in. So the location notifier, I said this creepy dude wants to track you. So when you opt in, what might you do with that? So the way this Java code is, it passes in a correlator string that tells you the user, the type of PIN, and the PIN. And again, the example I used, it was a 5-digit number. It could be whatever it happens to be. If If it comes back from that, if the mobile originated response is an allow, we go ahead and let the notification start in the case of the location notifier demo. And then a deny, you go ahead and update the state, say, you can't do this. And then importantly, you noticed in the location notifier is all that history. So you may want to maintain that history, when they opted in, all the different location fixes, things like that. So I should have talked about that when I did location. Here's a piece of Java code for the proximity. So here's for the math majors, right? So what this is, it uses an interesting formula. So when you're calculating this, you have to take into account the curvature of the Earth, right? So I'm showing a map. It's, just showing it this way, but of course, there's curvature of the Earth. And there's a very interesting formula called the Haversine formula, and it's great circle distances between 2 points on a sphere using latitude and longitude. So there you go. If you haven't learned anything, you've learned that there's a cool math function you could do to determine that distance between 2 points on a globe. All right, so I'm switching gears a little bit. We gave all the love to location. Going to go back to messaging real quick. So when you guys came in early, I had a picture stream running, and we actually had this kind of problem where, the messaging APIs weren't getting any love. So the real truth of this is we just, dreamed up a use case for this. We happened to be going to the Consumer Electronics Show, so we thought, let's make an application where we're running a big display in the booth, and people can go take a picture with their mobile, send it with an MMS up into a cloud app, and then we'll display it on the big screen, right? All sounds good. Yes, sir. Question?
I hate to diverge.
Yeah.
On that last screen, the Java code, that's kind of cool. Where's it running?
This code is running, in fact, all the demonstrations I've showed you are running in a web app in the cloud.
Okay, the web app you were...
That's correct. So this was in the proximity demo, the last demo. It's implementing this. So when it gets...
So then if I were to spin up a web app on my local Tomcat,
Yes.
what would I point it at?
You would point it at the remember I mentioned that service exposure, the OCSG. So that's the service exposure point. So when you onboard through the Verizon developer community, we hand you some credentials. You authenticate it to it. You send your question. Great questions. Yes, sir.
So I assume that it's a default to be opted out if they don't respond positively to opt in.
That is correct.
Is there a way of forcing it to be opted in? I don't suppose you have privacy. I'm thinking of a situation where you've got maybe parent-child accounts or business with sub-accounts that you do want to get control of.
Okay. So that's a great question. So, and I think that's a use case. So, there's an account owner. So I, got kids. I'm an account owner. They have phones. The account owner could go into my Verizon portal, and on the behalf of the people within your account, you can opt them in. So if you're going to be, if I'm going to be a creepy dad and I'm going to track my kids because I know it freaks them out, I have the ability through the My Verizon portal to, on their behalf, and it's only because I'm the account holder, I happen to be the dude who pays the bills as well, right? Yeah. So, so that in that context, that's a legitimate one. All right. So getting close to finishing up here. So I mentioned, questions. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question. So he's asking about more metadata about that location. So today, you could do that by finding location by some other third-party thing. So if you go to Google Maps, you can actually kind of see what's around. So I would suggest that you probably don't need Verizon to do anything for you. In your app, you can mash that up. So once you have the location and latitude, longitude, there's other web services you could probably leverage, mapping services that you could find things around that. So for doing things like offers, I think that would be a wonderful thing. One of the use cases I hear that, set a geofence. When you enter the geofence at the store, send me a coupon to my mobile device. That's something I would use. That'd be awesome, right? So yeah, that kind of stuff. Those are great use cases. All right, so back trying to give messaging some love. Back to the CES show. Before putting an image that somebody sends an MMS, we inserted a step to do real-time content approval, right? So that seemed like a good idea on a public display. I can show you a little bit about what that looks like. In fact, let me do that. So I'm going to show you how. Let me do that. Let me go to my Android phone. All right, so what I'm going to do is, I've got this phone here. I'll come back to this. Let me show you. So I'll show this picture stream later. So this is the real-time content approval, and this is the mobile app piece. So that was in the thing. So here you'll notice that there's pictures that you take when you're at Java 1. There's one in here. Oh yeah, so here I like this one, the Masonic symbol, at the Masonic place we saw that, the Java keynotes. And so I go ahead and send it in. So what this is that real-time content approval piece, right? So that's relatively interesting, and I'll show you that. I was taking pictures this last session. Hugh's not paying attention. Hugh, there you are. So you made the big screen. So there's my colleague. All right, so that's the content approval. Now I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit here, back to the location stuff. So you notice I have an application called Reporter. So as part of this application for doing the picture stuff, what we've done is added some location features. So here it is, again, using course location, and here's my location on here. And this is subtle, but try to bear with me on here. So I can look at it in a map view or a satellite view. And this is pretty good. This is essentially looking around. This is where I'm at. I'll go back here to the satellite view. So this is a feature we like to call location tuning. So this says where I am. So this could be for good or for evil. This could be for making it more accurate or less accurate. This would have been good in the Moscone. If I was buried deep in the bowels of Moscone Center and, I wasn't using Wi-Fi, I just had this, well, he's kind of here. I could say, well, where I really am is, it's refining its fix. And I'll be able to set a point and say, that's where I really am. So if, say, I have friends and they're meeting me and I know them and it's cool, I might say, I'll tune my location to tell you exactly where I am. Now, I'll let you use your own imagination. What if there's a case where this is kind of saying where I am and I don't want to tell them where in fact, I want to say I want to obfuscate it. And I was thinking about this last night. One example could be one of the guys had a session about, it had eHarmony and all these dating sites. So say, and this isn't me because I'm way too old for this, but say I'm meeting someone for the first time and I say, I'll meet you at this coffee shop, right? And so perhaps what I might want to do is, say, I'll tell them I'm at the coffee shop, but I'll be, across the street watching them. So I may say, you know what, where I really am is up here, right? So again, if nothing else, is a little different spin on it, and again, used for good. But being able to tune your location and to say where you are, either to make it more accurate, perhaps less accurate. Go ahead.
So you opt in. Let's use this. So if I opt my children for this, does that mean that any application uses the API can basically, or is it just opt in for this one scenario?
Excellent question. So the question is, if you opt in, do you opt in for all these applications or is it for a specific one? It's per application, right? So I use the location notifier. That's one, or the GeoFriend. It's only that app. And in fact, if you sign up for a lot of them and you go to My Verizon Portal, you'll see each one listed and you can turn them on or off. But per app, so that's really important. Good question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
What about per requester?
So that's a great question. So the question is per requester. That is a work in progress, and that's something we've wanted to do for a long, long time. And in fact, one of the things that I'm not really going to talk a lot about is OAuth, and we're looking at as a possible solution for that. So let's kind of dive into that because that's a great use case. Right now, it's the Friend Finder wants to locate me. So anyone who's running Friend Finder could locate me. But really, I want to know it's Hugh using the Friend Finder app is trying to locate me. So we're not there yet, but that's where we want to go. We want that fine-grained level of control. That's a work in progress, and I think that's certainly for the creepy factor. It's not only this app, it's who with that app, right? So yeah, that's when my kids would want to know which one of their crazy friends want to locate them. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
When you give the permission, we give for all time or for a limited time?
So the permissions for the typical opt-in, I showed you the SMS opt-in. And today for location, I could have picked one of your phones. Today it's allow always, allow never, or allow for 24 hours. That's from the SMS opt-in. So those are ones. I mean, the 24 hours is great, like the pizza guy. Say, I'm going to be somewhere in San Francisco, the pizza guy, you can locate me. Those are the options today. Our infrastructure underlying that can do much more fine-grained than that. But for the SMS, again, how many characters do you have in an SMS? That's just simple. So today, those are the options, but it's certainly extensible. Yes, sir.
I believe, at least on my phone at Verizon, the locator guy is a billable feature.
So there is, what is that called? There is an application that is built, potentially built. I'm aware of a Verizon application that, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. That
Turn it on, it costs $5 a month.
Yeah, I think there is something like that. I'm not. VZ Navigator, thank you. That is the application. I owe him 3 beers now. Yeah, so VZ Navigator, that's a charge for application. Yep. All right. Let's see. The location dip, this is using network APIs. And again, with the network API business policy, you get so many for free and then you pay for some. So eventually, right, we're going to want to make some money on it, but it might be a penny or something. It's not $5. All right. Yes, sir.
How often is the data updated? So if someone changes their device with Verizon, does that get reflected in the API right away?
Okay, so the great question. How often is the data updated? So if someone changes their device, now I've done this before when I bust a phone, and I'll go back and take my oldest phone and activate it. So when that activation happens, so you don't care about this, but under the covers in our IT systems, we say, oh, this particular MDN is now associated with not this Droid charge, with that Galaxy Nexus. That sits in there. It's updated at some pretty, I would suspect a minute later. I haven't tested this, but it's near real time, right? Because again, we use that data for that device. We use it for lots of other stuff. And when we go read that data, it's pretty near real time. Don't know exactly, but I think you can count on it being up to date. All right. Yes, sir. Question.
You mentioned accessibility. Do you have a plan for taking requests for extensions or additional APIs? Do you see that through standards?
Great question. So requests. So let me do this. I'm happy. I'm Paul.Schultz at Verizon.com. You can send them to me. There's the Verizon developer community. But yeah, the question is, are we taking requests? That's one of the things why we like to socialize this, and we'd like to hear that. Because again, you guys are the innovators. If there's things that we have that would make your job better, let us know about it. We're absolutely taking that feedback. That helps. Again, I'm in this gig. I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm passionate about doing this because exposing stuff that you guys can innovate on. It used to be the carriers build all this stuff ourselves, like VZ Navigator. Now it's let all you creative guys at it. So
yeah, something like this, like a social app that allows developers to propose ideas and then voting on it.
yeah, that crowdsource and stuff. Great idea. I like the way you're thinking. But please do tell us those types of ideas. I got the warning by the hook. I think I'm going to have to. The enforcer stopped in and told me I got to quit exactly on time. I got 3 minutes. With that, I want to thank everyone for your attention and have a great job of one.